There are poor actors and actresses who often work for food or for a couple of $1 million. Then there's a wealthier class of professionals who ask for 5 or 10 million, but there aren't as many of them. Although these days there are more due to streaming platforms. And then there are incredibly talented actors and actresses who earn 100 million for a single film because they take a percentage of the box office. Leonardo DiCaprio often demands upfront payment of $25, $30, $40 million or more for his participation, then receives modest bonuses if the film succeeds. Usually, these bonuses come from achieving certain box office milestones or winning major awards at festivals, which enhances his importance and the film's prestige. However, not all superstars can stay on top for 10, 20, or 30 years. It's only the very few elite ones who can, the rest inevitably slide down to a more average level over time, or sometimes even into very scary movie categories. DiCaprio is one of the very few actors who have remained at the top for a long time, but now there's a suspicious period in his career that could bring him down a notch. However, with streaming platforms, earning 30 or 40 million can continue for a long time, as demonstrated by Adam Sandler, who no longer releases movies in theaters but still gets hundreds of millions of views on Netflix, earning him tens of millions of dollars. DiCaprio can't replicate Sandler's success exactly because his movies don't have the same demand for physical media, but being almost like Adam Sandler in the streaming world is still quite good. In general, today we're not talking about funerals. Today we're talking about one of the highest paid actors of the last 25 years, Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio started from commercials. He wanted to be a captain, then an actor, but since he wasn't getting captain roles, he went to auditions and got noticed for commercials. His family lived poorly, so when thousands of dollars started coming in from commercials, he lost interest in other jobs and decided to pursue acting. He almost became Lenny instead of Leonardo and almost became Williams instead of DiCaprio. In short, it's a typical story where an agent suggests a stage name so people won't struggle to pronounce it, claiming Americans won't like foreign-sounding names and his career wouldn't go anywhere. But DiCaprio took the risk, and for a while, he struggled at auditions. He went to all available auditions, but no one wanted him in their film until his parents' connections came in handy, and he landed his first roles. His early roles were small, appearing even in a Elysia series spin-off after a dog series. His career took off from there, even appearing in a single episode of Santa Barbara, which was enough to boost his legendary status. Years later, he'll admit he was very lazy and didn't need to study to be an actor, so he chose the lazy path for his life. He dropped out of school but finished later when he became Leonardo DiCaprio. He probably even did everything himself. In the early 2000s, he grew to full movie stature, with Titanic being the third Jaws after the box office failure of the sequel. The studio drastically cut budgets for the third and fourth films, sending them straight to video, which talented actor DiCaprio didn't like. He even once said it might be the worst film of his career and he wouldn't want to do anything like it again. Despite Taming Sharks, he continued to audition, often crossing paths with Chris O'Donnell, who outshone him. He auditioned for the movie Scent of a Woman, but Chris was better, conquering the videocassette. Leo landed his first truly significant film, This Boy's Life, where he met Robert De Niro. Later, De Niro played a role in Leo's career. The film had a modest box office performance, but critics praised it, including Leonardo DiCaprio. From this film, the career of Leo's best friend, Tobey Maguire, also took off. Leo dragged Tobey into movies, claiming Tobey was very important. This led to What's Eating Gilbert Grape, the film for which Leonardo DiCaprio received his first Oscar and Golden Globe nominations. Johnny Depp, who played alongside him, received recognition from critics as well, spawning jokes in films like Soldier's Luck about playing disabled characters. Studios wanted Johnny Depp in many films, with producers even going to his house. Leonardo DiCaprio was one of those actors offered the role of the journalist in Interview with the Vampire. Initially, River Phoenix was supposed to play it, but he passed away. Many young actors refused the role afterward, including DiCaprio. Rumor has it he didn't like how small the role was, and attempts to expand it failed. Tom Cruise was known for reducing the roles of those he acted with, and he couldn't give a few minutes to someone like Leonardo. DiCaprio also turned down another significant film, as Warner Brothers wanted him as Robin. Surprisingly, he was initially open to the idea, as he loved Tim Burton's films, but turned it down because the new Batman had to be significantly different from Burton's works. After talking to director Joel Schumacher, DiCaprio disliked the vision for the film and declined. Instead, he starred in The Basketball Diaries and The Quick and the Dead. The Basketball Diaries was initially a project of River Phoenix, but when he couldn't do it, DiCaprio readily stepped in. The film failed at the box office and was critically panned, but it didn't negatively impact DiCaprio's career. After the huge box office success of Dances with Wolves and Unforgiven, all Hollywood studios stopped making westerns for a few years. During the peak of his career, Sharon Stone wanted to see DiCaprio in her film, and as it was being made during her peak, she practically ran everything on set. Initially, producers approached Matt Damon, who was unavailable, so Stone offered Leo the role. The film's budget couldn't afford DiCaprio's usual fee, so he agreed to work for a smaller amount, only $150,000. The Quick and the Dead flopped at the box office, but DiCaprio always speaks positively about the experience, claiming it was a great learning opportunity. Despite these setbacks, his career continued to flourish, receiving offers from all sides. The main male role in the film could have been played by Matthew McConaughey or Johnny Depp. Between McConaughey and DiCaprio, director James Cameron had already made his final choice. Johnny Depp, who was offered a role by Cameron, initially declined and later constantly avoided questions about his refusal. Titanic wasn't a guaranteed hit, rather, most people saw it sinking and were wary of actors who were cast in such dubious movies. Depp feared that the failure of a $200 million film would sink his career entirely. Leo also didn't like Titanic. James Cameron had to convince him it would be a challenge, which took some time. Leo called the script dull and suggested replacing him with a less talented actor. But Cameron persisted, and for $2.5 million, Leo agreed to step in. He still risked losing the role when he was called for skateboard auditions with Kate Winslet. DiCaprio refused, stating he didn't practice such things, and if they wanted to, they could try without him. Cameron thanked him for his honesty, saying they needed an actress with whom Leo would have chemistry on screen, thus, Leo was relieved of duties he usually didn't handle. Titanic hit theaters in December 1997 and remained the highest-grossing film in Hollywood history until 2009. It was the first film to cross the $1 billion mark and nearly reach $2 billion. The original release grossed $1 billion, later re-releases brought its total to $2.64 billion. Many remember the frenzy surrounding the film. DiCaprio instantly became an A-lister. Titanic is the only film in Oscar history to be nominated in 14 categories and win none in acting categories. Leo got his first and only Razzie Award during this time. Many were upset by his ubiquity, leading to Razzie nominations, especially after his roles in The Man in the Iron Mask and Celebrity. Leo took a hiatus after Titanic, feeling overwhelmed by the attention. He studied hundreds of scripts, as everyone wanted him, but he wanted something unconventional. One such film was The Matrix, but he turned it down because he didn't want special effects to play his part. Another film offered was The Mummy, which Leo was eager to join, but by then, he was signed for The Beach. He asked to postpone The Beach filming, but it was denied. Interestingly, The Beach ended up being postponed anyway. The lead role in The Mummy went to Brendan Fraser. Around the making of The Beach, various unsavory rumors circulated about director Danny Boyle. Some attribute this to Leo's signing, claiming Boyle favored Leo over Ewan McGregor, who had to shoot the film under harsh conditions and for a much smaller fee than Leo. Boyle and McGregor later clarified it was a misunderstanding, and they remained friends. They would collaborate again in the future. Perhaps that's the case, but in The Beach, Leo ended up earning more than he did in his entire previous career. The film grossed $145 million at the box office with a budget of $50 million, and all that success went into Leo's pocket. While the film received mixed reviews, some even criticizing Leo, the $150 million were acknowledged as his accomplishment. This further solidified his status as an actor, despite receiving another Golden Raspberry nomination, his last to date. And here Leo stumbled dangerously in his career for the first time, 2 films in a row flopped. One of them, Body of Lies, failed to impress critics, which is the worst kind of box office failure when professionals remain silent. The other was Revolutionary Road, directed by Sam Mendes. Despite receiving a Golden Globe nomination for his role in the latter, the film went relatively unnoticed and performed poorly at the box office. Ridley Scott, too, realized immediately and didn't work with Leo again. Critics had already crushed Body of Lies, and it only managed to gather $115 million at the box office with a $70 million budget for both films. Leo earned less than $20 million for both, practically pennies, and received little praise. It's hard to imagine the level of drama. As usual, Martin Scorsese came to the rescue with Shutter Island. Typically, it's believed that Leo brought home the Oscar for Scorsese with this film as well, but it was the studio's decision to push another film for the award season. Nevertheless, it's sometimes tied to Leo being too busy and unable to attend all the events to promote the film effectively. Promotion for a major film for the Oscars can cost anywhere from $20 to $50 million, and Leo was the only contender for the lead role in Inception before all the others were cast around him. He even nearly brought Kate Winslet on board, but she declined. There are 2 official versions of why Winslet turned it down: either she couldn't see herself in that role, or she was afraid of being too strongly associated with Leo after their third collaboration. Instead, Marion Cotillard was cast, and the film became Leo's highest-grossing film at that time, earning $839 million with a $160 million budget. Leo earned over $60 million from it, including percentages. There's a joke that Christopher Nolan refused to work with Leo again because of this. Indeed, Nolan always gets a percentage, and it's very difficult to take it alongside such an actor as Leo. After Inception, Leo decided to work with Clint Eastwood on J. Edgar, which seemed like a typical Oscar bait movie, but it didn't pan out well. Critics and audiences received it modestly. However, it performed decently at the box office, much like his next film, Django Unchained, directed by Quentin Tarantino. Tarantino had long been trying to lure Leo into one of his projects, even in a producing capacity. However, Leo consistently refused, citing different reasons. In Django Unchained, the role of Calvin Candy initially went to Kevin Costner, but he declined due to reluctance to play in makeup. Later, Leo turned down Tarantino again, this time for the role in The Hateful Eight. He didn't want to play the part of the villain, as he was afraid of having to curse and glorify slavery. So, Tarantino had to take Samuel L. Jackson with him, who explained to Leo that he could call him whatever he wanted on set, and he'd sort out any issues quickly. Leo agreed after the conversation with Jackson, and he agreed to work for just $1 million plus a percentage of the box office. Django Unchained became a big hit, and Leo received his next round of nominations after it. Hugh Jackman joined the cast of The Kidnapping of Edgardo Mortera when Antoine Fuqua was still directing, but Fuqua left due to disagreements with the studio, causing Jackman to depart as well. After the exit of both, the lead role became available, and Leonardo DiCaprio expressed interest. Despite lengthy negotiations, an agreement couldn't be reached, often attributed to financial issues. The actor refused to accept the offered $25 million, which was already a reduction. Authors couldn't meet the demand due to inflation, as Leo's fee had already reached $25 million. This was the sum he received for Martin Scorsese's latest film, which had an adult rating like Showgirls. Leo and Martin believed they could afford it theoretically, as the film was financed by independent investors. However, the budget was slightly trimmed during production. Leo received the most sensitive blow of his career during filming. Margot Robbie accidentally hit him in the face while filming, causing him to briefly lose his bearings. The entire crew fell silent, but Leo quickly recovered and even suggested filming another take of the scene. A similar incident wasn't included in the final cut, likely because it was too masterfully played. The Wolf of Wall Street also smashed the box office with an adult rating, grossing $393 million with a $100 million budget. The subsequent The Great Gatsby performed similarly, earning $353 million with a $105 million budget. Finally, after Django Unchained, Leo won his long-awaited Oscar for The Revenant, agreeing to work for peanuts upfront in exchange for future percentages. His fee varied from $20 million to $30 million depending on the percentage. The initial budget of $60 to $70 million ballooned to $135 million during production. Despite the challenges, the film did exceptionally well, grossing $532 million, also with an adult rating. Leo's Oscar win reduced the internet memes, leaving only one suggesting that the Oscar ceremony was no longer worth watching. He admitted that The Revenant exhausted him, requiring a break before his next project, which didn't hit theaters until 2019. This time, it was Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. To meet the $90 million budget, Leo agreed to reduce his fee by $1 million, just like in Django Unchained. The film grossed $378 million and added another successful entry to Leo's streak of box office hits, making him the most successful actor of his generation with 8 consecutive box office successes. Currently, Leo's film is on streaming, enjoying significant viewership, and his last theatrical release, Killers of the Flower Moon, was produced for Apple but flopped at the box office. Despite being considered a promotional move by Apple, the film performed well on the streaming platform. Leo's next project, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, is still in production, shrouded in secrecy due to Anderson's films never grossing over $100 million. With a $100 million budget, it seems suspicious, indicating it's not intended for streaming. It could mark either Leo's first official flop or his 11th consecutive hit if it manages to break even. However, Leo remains unmarried and unattached amidst his impressive career. Incorrectly, Leo is not married. Many expect this from him, but he only dates models, with whom he signs strict contracts until they turn 25. This sounds amusing, although it doesn't always happen that way. Lately, various theories have been in vogue, and I recently learned that some people believe the Earth is flat. I find it interesting how James Cameron earned $2 billion by inventing an iceberg, and there's also a Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster that people talk about. Some claim that the disappearance of pirates is linked to global warming, which sounds fascinating. Ultimately, time will tell if they're right. As for Leo, he's 49 years old, which is already a dangerous age for a superstar. Perhaps he should consider transitioning into the role of a wise actor like Jack Nicholson or starting a career in other fields, but it's worth remembering that he can always step down one rung lower. Thank you for your attention, stay tuned.